Hello everyone, welcome to Chetan Bharat Learning and welcome back to our UPSC Mains 2021 course and test series. Now this course, I'll repeat again, this course is for those people who have qualified their prelims exam and are appearing for their Mains 2021 exam. Well, for others, those who weren't able to qualify their prelims exam, well, if you want to prepare for mains for next year itself, then you can also watch this course and it will benefit you in the long run. All right. Now, today is lecture 4 for economics. As you have been shared, as we have shared this timetable with you, today is GS3 lecture 4 for economics. All right. So in lecture number 4 for economics, we'll be discussing 5 questions. And these 5 questions shall be from this topic: inclusive growth and issues arising from it. This is mentioned word to word, verbatim. This is mentioned in your GS3 syllabus. So we are going to cover this through 5 questions, through a set of 5 questions. All right. Inclusive growth and issues arising from it. All right. So without further ado, let's take a look at question number 1. Repeated loan waivers may be in the interest of political parties, but are not in the interest of farmers. Critically examine. Well, as you guys all know that the season of farm loan waivers was very prevalent last year, right? So it becomes relevant for us to talk about farm loan waiver. Now, as you guys all know that the agrarian sector was going through a crisis of sorts, right? What was the crisis? Well, land productivity, or as you call it, land fertility was declining, yield was declining, farm incomes were declining, and debt on farmers was rising. That's what was happening. Okay. Now, agrarian sector, especially the farmers were facing these problems. Land fertility was down because of overuse of fertilizers and non-availability of irrigation facilities. Then yield was down, income was down, and debt was pretty high. Now, in such a situation, various state governments decided that some of the loans taken by farmers should be waived off. Right? So they waived off the loans taken by farmers so as to provide them a one-time debt relief. Right? So many loans taken by farmers in various states like Uttar Pradesh, or not Uttar Pradesh, Punjab, Karnataka, various states launched farm loan waiver schemes through which these state governments actually waived off the loans taken by farmers. All right. Now, it provided a sort of temporary relief to farmers. But you know what? It did benefit various political parties, as political parties wanted to appease the farmers. That's what is alleged. All right. Political parties wanted to appease farmers, and so for vote bank, they actually waived off loans. Now that is what is alleged. Now, many policy experts, many economists say that farm loan waiver scheme is actually dangerous. They say that it shouldn't be employed. Waiving of loans taken by farmer is not good, and it also not benefits the farmers in the long run. It might provide them some relief in the short run, but in the long run or medium term, it won't give any benefit to the farmers. So it's hazardous for farmers, it's hazardous for the economy. That's what various economists, the likes of Raghuram Rajan, Urjit Patel, Rangarajan, many of these people, many of these economists actually criticize the farm loan waiver scheme employed by various state governments. Now, first of all, to approach this answer, you need to know about the benefits of farm loan waiver scheme, as to why these political parties employed these schemes, why political parties provided this sort of short-term debt relief to farmers. Well, for a very simple reason: benefits of farm loan waiver scheme. Benefits of the scheme were, well, again, these problems only. Land fertility was down, yield was down, income was down, debt was pretty high, and the farm sector as a whole was facing a severe debt crisis, especially in the Green Revolution states, Punjab, Haryana, Western Uttar Pradesh, right? They were facing severe debt crisis. So to provide a short-term relief to farmers, government came up with this farm loan waiver scheme. Now, as they have categorically asked you to critically examine this statement, well, you need to also provide the disadvantages of this scheme. Now, what are the disadvantages? Let's take a look. Farm loan waiver cons. First of all, economists say that it provides short-term solution. It provides only a short-term solution. The farm loan waiver scheme does not solve the inherent problems in our agricultural system. Our agricultural system is facing a severe crisis, but there are various reasons for that. Right? So farm loan waiver scheme is actually not solving those reasons. It's actually not looking at those reasons. It's just solving a temporary symptom. As they say, like whenever you are infected with a disease, if you're not treating the disease itself, you'll not get cured. If you're just suppressing the symptoms of that disease, for example, you have fever, so you take paracetamol. That's just suppressing the symptom, right? You're not actually treating the disease with antibiotics and all. Similarly, farm loan waiver scheme is actually just suppressing the system. It is not solving the problems that are plaguing the agriculture system. So many economists say that this problem of debt will arise again. Will you provide farm loan waiver scheme again and again? That's not feasible. Why? Because farm loan waiver scheme also comes with a fiscal cost. And what is that fiscal cost? Well, at the expense of taxpayers, government is bailing out farmers. So government is not facing the loss. Government is actually providing a waiver to farmers. Yeah, their debt is getting forgiven. But who is bearing the brunt? Who is bearing the cost of that? Well, taxpayers, right? So it comes with a huge fiscal cost, and it's not feasible for the government to provide farm loan waiver schemes again and again. Hence, what government should do is, government should solve the underlying problems plaguing the farm system, plaguing the farm sector. Without that, this problem of debt would arise again and again. It would not be feasible for government to provide farm loan waiver schemes again and again because it comes with a fiscal cost. Then the third big issue is moral hazard. What do we mean by this moral hazards? By providing farm loan waiver scheme, you are giving a signal to the farmers that if adequate political pressure is applied, they do not need to return back their loans. They do not need to pay back their borrowings. That's the sort of signal you are sending to the farmers. So next time farmers will take loans and they will feel that we don't have to pay this back. We'll apply political pressure. We'll collect ourselves. We'll apply political pressure to the political parties, and they will waive off our loans. Now that's not the right system, because at the end of it all, it will hamper the credit culture of banks. If farm loan waiver scheme becomes a norm that the governments employ time and again, then bankers would be reluctant to lend to farmers. Why? Because they know that farmers know that they can take any amount of loan. They don't have to pay it back. So farmers are taking this loan, but this loan is not going to be paid back because farmers would apply political pressure on governments and governments would bail them out. Right? So it creates a moral hazard and it destroys the credit culture in your country. Banks would face a lot of brunt because of it. So it is because of these three major reasons, though there are other small reasons also that will be given to you in your model answers, but it is because of these three reasons that they say that farm loan waiver scheme is actually not good. It is actually benefiting political parties because through that they can win the votes of these farmers, and farmers' vote bank is pretty big. So they can win elections because of that, but as far as the economy is concerned, economy would stand to lose. So hence the question, repeated loan waivers may be in the interest of political parties, but are not in the interest of farmers. Now it is not in the interest of the nation, and it is also not in the interest of farmers in the long run. That's what I have explained. It's just a short-term solution. It is just suppressing the symptoms of the problem. It is not treating the disease. It's just suppressing the symptoms. Right? Now, what you'll do is, I have explained the issue to you. Now you'll read the model answers provided to you with this lecture in a PDF format, and you'll read all the relevant points and try to apply those points in your answers as well. All right? Make sense? Chalo, let's move on to the next question. Question number 2. The aspirational districts program will play a key role in bridging the development gap and is vital to social and political stability. Examine. Now, this question is telling you to explain how aspirational districts program would bridge the development gap. Now, bridge the development gap means, well, there are certain regions in India that are highly developed, certain metropolitan cities, and there are certain regions in India that are not developed at all. Their human development index is similar to that of sub-Saharan Africa. Now, that's not a nice situation for these regions to be in. Their human development index is equivalent to sub-Saharan Africa. Whereas you have places like Mumbai, Delhi, Bangalore. There are places like Odisha, Jharkhand, Bihar. There are some places in these areas also whose human development index is pretty low. So there is development gap, right? There are some places that are very high as far as human development is concerned, and there are some places that are very low as far as human development is concerned. So aspirational districts program actually seeks to bridge this gap, to close this gap, right? Now in this question, they have asked you to examine this statement. That means you need to explain how aspirational districts program is bridging this gap. And the second part of the question is that how aspirational districts program is vital to social and political stability. Okay, so let's come to the first part of the question. Now, to answer the first part of your question as to how aspirational districts program will bridge this gap, you need to explain what aspirational districts program is. So what is aspirational districts program? Well, it was the brainchild of Niti Aayog. Now, under aspirational districts program, 115 districts shall be selected. These 115 districts shall be selected from 28 states. The idea would be that there should be at least one district from one state. All right. So these 115 districts shall be selected from 28 states, and the state government and the central government would focus to develop these districts, to improve the human development indicators in these districts. Now, to inculcate competition among these 115 districts so that they are competing with each other to improve human development outcomes. Well, Niti Aayog has created an index on the basis of which each district shall be ranked and each district shall be given a score. Now that index, as developed, aspirational districts program index developed by Niti Aayog, it actually judges these districts on 5 parameters. All right, what are those parameters? Health and nutrition, health and nutrition has 30% weightage. Then education, it again has 30% weightage. Then there is financial inclusion. Financial inclusion and skill development. It has 20% weightage. Then there is agriculture and water resources. I'm sorry, financial inclusion and skill development has 10% weightage. Agriculture and water resources has 20% weightage. And the last is infrastructure, basic infrastructure, like roads and all. Basic infrastructure again has 10% weightage. So what is happening? 115 districts, government, both center and state governments would converge to develop these 115 districts so that the people living in these districts are facing a good level of human development. All right. Now, to instill competition among these 115 districts, I'll repeat again, Niti Aayog has come up with an index. On the basis of that index, each and every district in this program will get a score, and on the basis of that score, they'll secure a rank. right? That index, the score on that index is based on these 5 parameters. All right. So by explaining by explaining what aspirational districts program is and what this competition and this index is, you will in the end write that through this, government is trying to lift these 115 districts to the level of those districts that are highly developed in India. All right. And in that endeavor, government is trying to bridge the gap. Make sense? Now let's take a look at the second part of this question. How bridging this gap or aspirational districts program is vital to social and political stability. Well, when you'll cover social issues, society, you'll know that the basic cause of revolution or any social movement, basic cause of any revolution, social revolution or social movement is relative deprivation. Is relative deprivation. Now, relative deprivation means that people in one country, some people are highly developed and some people are very low on development indicators, right? So people that are very low on development indicators would see that the government is favoring these highly developed people, highly developed regions at the expense of these regions. They would feel that on paper we are one country. But as far as development is concerned, government is actually favoring these states or these districts. We are not being taken care of. So what will they do? The ideas of revolution, the ideas of social movement would become attractive to these people, right? And then one demagogue will appear and he or she would mobilize these people and there shall be a social revolution, riots, political movement, right? That's how things move, all right? So to ensure that there is no social revolution, social movement, and there is political stability, you need to take care of those people also who have historically been not taken care of, right? And aspirational districts program is an attempt in that direction. Make sense? All right. Now the detailed points shall be given to you in the model answers, but I just wanted to explain the theme of this question, how you should approach this question. Make sense? All right. Chalo fir. Let's move on to third question. Question number 3. Discuss the components of bare necessities index. Is it feasible measure to assess economic development in India? Well, you know, this year's economic survey came up with bare necessities index. And in that index, they are trying to see which district or which state is able to provide bare necessities, minimum necessities to its people. Because access to bare necessities is very important. What are bare necessities? Well, water, sanitation, basic education, basic health facilities, primary health facilities. These are certain bare necessities without which human life is pretty insignificant. Without which equality of opportunity is not secured in our country. Right? So certain minimum things need to be provided to the poor people so as to lift these people out of poverty. Right? Now, economic survey actually came out with an index called BNI, Bare Necessities Index, through which it is actually judging different regions of your country on the basis of which region is able to provide its people with the bare necessities. All right. Now, this question is fairly direct. It is just asking you to discuss the components of bare necessities index. So this part of your question is pretty simple. It's very simple. The tricky part is it feasible measure to assess economic development? Is bare necessities index a proper measure of measuring economic development? Should we look towards bare necessities index to judge whether a particular area is economically developed or not? Is bare necessities index a good measure of development or not? So in this part of the question, they are asking for your opinion. And mind you, your opinion should always be positive. So we'll see how we shall approach this part. Now, first of all, let's discuss the components of bare necessities index. Well, first of all, you'll explain what are bare necessities. Bare necessities, it includes housing, water, sanitation, electricity, clean cooking fuel, as these are jointly consumed by all members of a household. Access to these saves time for a household, which they can utilize in productive activities such as education and learning. Do you know many females in India, many young females in India do not have access to education because most of their time is wasted in getting water for their family. They have to travel long distances to get water. And because they are wasting their time, or they are actually spending their time in that activity, they are not left with free time to spend on education, on health, right? Similarly, if various bare necessities are not taken care of, people do not get access to other productive things, other good things like health, education, and all that stuff, right? If the state is successful in providing bare necessities, then that supports better performance on the human development front. That's pretty natural. To measure the progress in the delivery of the bare necessities, the Economic Survey developed a composite index called the Bare Necessities Index, BNI. All right, now let's take a look at the components. Let's try to answer the first part of this question. BNI is an attempt to quantify basic needs approach to economic development using data from the National Statistical Office. So how would Economic Survey know whether this particular area has provided bare necessities to its population? Well, Government of India, NSO, actually conducts various surveys. The data from that survey was used by Economic Survey to come out with the composite bare necessities index. All right. The composite index for the states for 2012 and 2018 has been creating using data mainly from two NSO rounds. 69th round 2012 में 2012, 76th round 2018 on drinking water, sanitation, hygiene, housing conditions and all. Now, BNI measures access to the bare necessities for households in rural areas, urban areas, and at an all India level. So it is actually checking the rural areas. Are rural areas getting access to bare necessities? Are urban areas getting access to bare necessities? And is India as a whole getting access to bare necessities? These necessities are measured using 26 indicators on 5 dimensions. Now, what are these 5 dimensions, on the basis of which different regions of India are being judged and given a score, allotted a score in BNI? Well, these 5 dimensions are: number 1, water. What is the principal source of drinking water, distance from source of water, nature of access and all that. Then next is sanitation. Then housing. Then microenvironment index. The house that they are living in, is it feasible to live? Is it good? Does it have electricity? Does it have tap water? Does it have kitchen? Does it have attached bathroom? All these things are part of your microenvironment, your household environment. So these things are also being judged. And then other facilities index. Well, do you have good ventilation in your house and all that stuff, right? So your bare necessities index is actually looking at these 5 dimensions. So through this, the first part of your question gets answered, right? Components of bare necessities index. Now let's take a look at, is it feasible measure to assess economic development? Now, you know, this index is based on basic needs approach to economic development. Well, to judge economic development, you need to know what sort of approach you are following. Some people follow basic needs approach. That if people's basic needs are being met, then they are on the path of economic development. Some follow poverty, some follow various other means. BNI actually follows basic needs approach. It focuses on the minimum specified quantities of bare necessities such as food, clothing, and other things that are necessary to prevent ill health and undernourishment. Now, this bare necessities approach is also connected to India's Nobel laureate in economics, Amartya Sen. Nobel laureate Amartya Sen defines poverty as a failure to achieve certain minimum basic needs or capacities. Hence, BNI is a good measure to assess the levels of poverty, right? Because Amartya Sen defined poverty as failure to meet certain basic requirements. So if BNI is targeting those basic requirements, BNI is also a measure of assessing poverty levels in your country. Make sense, right? Research done by this survey finds that access to bare necessities determines performance on various human development indicators. For example, they say, what this line means is that access to bare necessities has a bearing on human development indicators. Now, as you guys all know, what is human development index made up of? It judges populations on the basis of education, health, and living standard. Right? So these are the 3 indicators of human development index. You see, good access to bare necessities has a positive impact or a positive correlation with good score on these fronts as well. So access to bare necessities is important if you want to improve these things in your population. For example, it is found that water hauling activity is negatively associated with the girls' school attendance. Like I've told you before, right? If teenage females are fetching water and a lot of their time is being spent on that activity, then they don't have enough time to go to school, right? So their education levels are getting impinged, impacted, right? Access to latrine in schools substantially increases enrollment for pubescent age girls. So education part of human development is getting taken care of for females if there is access to water. Further, there is a strong correlation between electricity consumption per capita and higher scores on the education index, right? So provisioning for a bare necessity called electricity is important to secure good educational outcomes. Access to clean drinking water, safe sanitation and clean cooking fuel also have direct linkages with infant mortality rate, under 5 mortality rate, health of members in the household. So health part is also getting taken care of if there is access to bare necessities. Hence, bare necessities index is important. It's a better approach to judge for human development or economic development for that matter. Therefore, it is fair to say that this index is a good measure to assess development levels in a country. All right? Clear? So we have answered both parts of the question. Now let's move on to the second part. Let's move on to the fourth question. Elaborate on the notion that healthcare is a critical public good. Also, critically analyze the impact of Pradhan Mantri Jan Arogya Yojana on the health outcomes. Now, first of all, you need to know, to answer this question, first of all, read this question carefully. They're asking you to elaborate on the notion that some people say that healthcare is a public good. Now, to answer this part of the question, you need to know what are public goods, right? And how are they different from private goods? Well, there are two features that actually define public goods. Public goods are those goods that are non-exclusionary in nature, and they follow a non-rivalrous relationship. Now, what do you mean by non-exclusionary? Those goods that are non-exclusionary. What are exclusionary goods? That exclude certain parts of your population, right? For example, this pen, right? Not everyone can have access to this pen. Those who can afford this pen will get access to this pen. Those who cannot afford this pen, well, they won't have access to this pen, right? So in that regard, this pen becomes exclusionary because this pen is being bought on a price. Make sense? So people who can afford that price are included. People who cannot afford this price, they are excluded. Now, this is an example of private good. Now, public goods are non-exclusionary. That means they do not exclude anyone. They are available for everyone. Now, I'll give you some examples. Public parks. Public parks are non-exclusionary in nature, right? Government roads are non-exclusionary in nature. Everyone can travel on government roads, rural roads. The service of law and order, police, national defense, all these services are accessible to each and every citizen of our country. The service of public administration, it is accessible to each and every citizen of our country, right? So it is non-exclusionary in nature. Make sense, right? Now, what do we mean by non-rivalrous? Non-rivalrous means, you see, I'll take the example of this pen again. You see, there is a factory in India that manufactures these pens, and they sell this pen on a particular price. So this particular pen is exclusionary. But this particular pen is also rivalrous. Now how? Now this factory is manufacturing a finite number of pens. If I purchase close to 50% of these pens, then I am leaving lesser amount of pens for the rest of the population. If I consume too much of a good, I leave little amount of that good behind for other people to consume. Right? So this is rivalrous. I have a rivalry with other people. If I'm consuming more, I'm leaving less for other people to enjoy. So this is a rivalrous thing. Now, private goods follow a rivalrous relationship, whereas public goods do not follow a rivalrous relationship. So there are two key features that define a public good. They are non-exclusionary in nature. They are non-rivalrous in nature. Now, the first part of this question says that elaborate on the notion that healthcare is a critical public good. Now, what they are saying is that healthcare should be treated as a public good. Healthcare should be non-exclusionary. That means everyone should have access to health. There should be universal health coverage, right? And it should also be non-rivalrous. If I am consuming too much of healthcare, that means if I'm taking care of my health, I'm not leaving less for other people behind. You follow the logic, right? So they say that generally healthcare is private good. Generally it is treated as private goods in private good in various economies like USA and for some extent in India also. But they say that healthcare should be treated as a public good. As a matter of fact, it should be treated as a critical public good. Why? First of all, this is the definition of public goods, right? We have cleared that. How is healthcare a public good? The outbreak of COVID-19 has prompted many experts to point out that health insurance and preventive care are really public goods that everyone uses and shares for everyone else's benefit. If I'm healthy, if I'm not infectious, then I won't spread that infection. So if I'm healthy, everyone around me is healthy. If I'm carrying COVID, then everyone around me is vulnerable. So my health is important for their health as well. Right? So COVID-19 pandemic actually proved to those people also who were skeptical about keeping healthcare as a public good, those who wanted healthcare to be a private good, COVID-19 pandemic actually taught them that healthcare should be treated as a public good. Make sense? Right? So healthcare is a critical public good. Now, what are the advantages of keeping healthcare as a public good? Well, access to universal healthcare is essential for equality of opportunity. People living in slums are vulnerable to infectious diseases. And if they are getting infectious diseases, well, their labor productivity would decline because they'll take a lot of sick leaves, right? So labor productivity would decline. Equality of opportunity would also decline because people living in better off areas would get the job because their attendance would be good. Whereas people living in slums, well, because they are most of the times they are sick, the employer wouldn't be happy with them. And therefore, they would lose out on that job. So there is no equality of opportunity, labor productivity is less, and overall well-being of the nation is less. Therefore, to keep healthcare completely within the domain of markets is not advisable. You see, private goods are provided through the mechanism of market, through demand and supply. But public goods can't be kept within the domain of market. Public goods should be kept within the domain of government. Government is responsible for providing public goods. Otherwise, all the goods and services are provided through the market. But public goods cannot be provided through the markets because it would lead to market failure. Everyone needs to get access to healthcare. Everyone needs to get access to public goods. And market is not good with that. Right? So healthcare shouldn't be left only at private hands, only with private hands. Hence, policy experts are advised to treat healthcare as a public good. All right. So this is the first part of the question. Now let's take a look at Pradhan Mantri Jan Arogya Yojana. Now, according to this question, they have asked you the impact of Pradhan Mantri Jan Arogya Yojana on health outcomes. How successful this Jan Arogya Yojana was. You have to comment on that. But before commenting on that, you need to mention that what is this Jan Arogya Yojana? You need to mention the details of Jan Arogya Yojana, right? So the details of Jan Arogya Yojana are given here. All right, you can take a look at that in your model answers. These details will be mentioned in the model answer itself. So first explain what is Pradhan Mantri Jan Arogya Yojana. Then explain how this Jan Arogya Yojana benefited the nation. Health outcomes through PMJAY. Health outcomes are measured by National Family Health Survey 4 that was conducted in 2015-16 and National Family Health Survey 5 that was conducted in 2019-20. So by comparing data from this and this, we see an improvement and we can safely say that this improvement was due to this scheme. In 2015-16, there was no Jan Arogya Yojana, but in 2019-20, there was. So by comparing the data, the health outcomes between these two time periods, you can clearly assess the impact of Pradhan Mantri Jan Arogya Yojana. Make sense? Right? So let's take a look at the impact. Health insurance. The proportion of households with health insurance increased by 54% for the states that implemented this scheme, while falling by 10% in the states that did not adopt this scheme. So clearly PMJAY was beneficial on health insurance. More people are getting access to health insurance. Then next, infant mortality rate, under 5 mortality rate, neonatal mortality rate. The reduction in IMR was 20% vis-a-vis 12% in PMJAY and non-PMJAY states. Then under 5 mortality rate also declined. Neonatal mortality rate also saw improvement in those states that implemented PMJAY. Then same is the case with family planning, then maternal and childcare services, and overall benefits, the awareness of healthcare, and all these overall incidental benefits, they improved with the implementation of PMJAY scheme. So what this survey did was, that they compared those states that implemented PMJAY with those states that did not. What they found was that those states that implemented PMJAY, they improved on these accounts, these 5 indicators: health insurance, IMR, mortality rates, family planning, childcare services, overall benefits. All right. So this is how your answer should be formulated. Make sense? Now let's move on to the last question, question number 5. In an era of rapidly changing work structure and organization, discuss how the nature of job contract for gig worker is different from the contract between an employer and employee. In this context, discuss the challenges with regard to providing social security benefits for gig workers. Now, as you guys all know, with the onset of technology and with the onset of change in culture, like work from home culture, gig workers or gig economy is becoming more popular than traditional economy or traditional job environments, right? This has been the case. Now, the problem with gig economy is that gig economy is actually, in a way, provides a lot of flexibility to workers. It gives them choice. It gives them freedom as to where to work, when can they work. It gives gig workers a lot of freedom, this economy. But it also makes them vulnerable. As you know, gig workers do not have access to social security benefits from their employers. The proper traditional employer will get EPFO facilities, provident fund facility from their employer. They'll get insurance facilities from their employer. But gig workers won't get these facilities. So they are actually not getting the benefits of social security schemes run by government, right? So this is a problem. Now in this question, they have specifically asked you the difference between contract workers and gig workers, right? So what's the difference between contract workers and gig workers? Here I have given, in the introduction part, I have given the definition of what gig workers are. Now, difference between job contract for gig workers and regular contract workers. Well, gig work is more short and task specific. Okay? Nature of compensation is also more piecemeal. Normal contract workers receive a salary, whereas gig workers receive money on the basis of their work. When they are done with that work, they'll get money for it. For example, these Uber drivers are gig workers. As soon as they complete a ride, they'll get money for it. If they're not completing that ride, they're not getting money, right? They're not on a fixed payroll. Then, in case of gig work, workers have the freedom to choose when to work and where to work, right? That's not the case with contract workers. Before Code on Social Security 2020, gig workers were not covered for social security benefits available to other workers. So recently in 2020, government enacted Code on Social Security, in which social security schemes or provision for social security schemes for gig workers was also included. Before that, gig workers were not covered under any social security scheme, right? Now, the second part of the question is challenges for providing social security benefits to gig workers. It is mentioned over here. You can see that it's pretty easy to understand. That's why I'm not spending time on explaining this part. It's very easy to understand the challenges faced by gig workers. And the last part is Code on Social Security for gig workers. What has the government done to provide social security to gig workers? So government enacted Code on Social Securities. In that code, in that law, government enacted certain provisions through which even gig workers shall be covered under various social security schemes. All right. So it's pretty easy. You can take a look at this. Yeah. So with that, we have completed our 5 questions that covered inclusive growth topic in your syllabus for mains for economics. I hope you liked today's lecture and I hope it added some value to your preparation for mains 2021. All right. Baki, if you have any doubts, then you are free to ask us those doubts. I and many of my colleagues over here at Chetan Bharat Learning would be happy to receive your doubts. All right. So that's it from my side, guys. I'll see you next time with another set of 5 questions. Thank you.